Just heard President Obama outline his plan on how he wants to reduce the deficit by $3 trillion, in part by raising taxes. So joining us in this conversation is Grover Norquist. He's the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, of course, is known for persuading Republican candidates to sign his pledge against raising taxes, an influential voice in Washington on a policy that arguably could have a lot of influence on the investment world. Grover, welcome to InBusiness. The president says his plan is not class warfare, it's math. What's your reaction?
Well, he wants to have a $1.5 trillion tax increase plus another $400 billion in tax increases. You just heard his speech. He never mentioned tax increases. Seems to me if you're trying to get people to do something and you're embarrassed to say what you're doing, it's probably not a good sign.
Well, he talked about the unfairness of the tax burden, the way he characterized it, the way Warren Buffett characterized it in terms of upper income Americans not paying the same percentage tax rate as those in the middle class.
That was very interesting. Of course, as you know, 1%, the top 1% of American earners pay 40% of the federal income tax, and the president doesn't think this is enough. People should be very clear what the Warren Buffett test is. Warren Buffett says he pays mostly capital gains taxes, 15%. His secretary pays 35% on ordinary income. The Warren Buffett test means that the capital gains tax rate will go from 15% to 35%. With the president declaring war on savings and investment in America, if anybody believed this was anything other than a campaign speech, the stock market would be collapsing. They realize it's nonsense, but the president just called for taking the capital gains tax rate to 35%. Now, he's either a joke and nobody cares what he thinks, or he really means that, in which case the economy's in big trouble.
Well, Grover, you rightly point out that the market did not sell off. In fact, it's bouncing off the lows here on the floor of the exchange. Perhaps maybe some skepticism, but perhaps also just some reality in terms of the timetable. This isn't going to get done in the next few months.
This isn't going to happen between now and the next election. The president said, he gave a speech complaining that Speaker Boehner had said tax increases are off the table. And the president said, nobody should say my way or the highway. And then he proceeded to say, I demand tax increases of trillions of dollars. So he wants tax increases. The Republicans have said we have an overspending problem created largely by Obama and the Democrats over the last several years. Not completely, but largely. We're not raising taxes to pay for Obama's overspending.
We're going to take a break and let you finish that in just a moment. Grover, thanks for sticking around through the break with us. We were talking about, and the president referenced your pledge of your organization that is perceived as saying that Republicans will never raise taxes, essentially, if they sign on to your pledge. Why do you think that the president is mischaracterizing it?
Well, the pledge says no net tax increase. That is a pledge in support of tax reform. Take rates down, eliminate deductions and credits, as long as it's not a hidden tax increase. What the president said he wanted very clearly, demanded, was tax increases. He said he's against tax reform if it isn't a tax increase. Where he misstated, and I want to be respectful, but he said something that is not true and that his speechwriters should have known is not true, and that is that the taxpayer protection pledge that many congressmen and senators have signed, he claimed it was a pledge to protect particular deductions or credits. Not true, not true, never true. All deductions and credits can be eliminated as long as you cut rates in a revenue-neutral way. We are not defenders, nor are the Republicans in the House and Senate, defenders of any particular tax credit or deduction, as long as rates come down. The president misspoke and said something that was not true when he said the pledge will not allow the elimination of deductions and credits. Of course you do. Just bring rates down at the same time.
To be clear, what you're saying is that there wouldn't necessarily be consequence for a Republican who had signed your pledge to then support, changing deductions per se or length for credits if it's offset.
Oh, absolutely, yes. We're supportive of that, and the Ryan plan, Paul Ryan's proposal, moves in just that direction.
Well, let me ask you about a part of what the president was talking about today was how to pay for the jobs bill that he is proposing right now. And portion of this that has been highlighted time and again that might be politically awkward for some Republicans is the inclusion of a tax cut for employers and for employees. Are you supportive of that payroll tax holiday extension and expansion?
Well, we have to. I'm not certain. We have to take a look at all the various ways in which we can reduce taxes and reduce the burden. The challenge with stimulus 2, the $400 billion stimulus, is we did stimulus 1 for $800 billion, and things got worse. The president believes that if the government takes $1 out of the economy and spends it, that there's a multiplier effect. We now have $1.8 because the government took $1 from you and gave it to somebody else. That's the Keynesian multiplier. It's nonsense, but the president's economists believe it to be true, except it didn't work with the $800 billion that was wasted and didn't create jobs and didn't create growth. He now wants to do it again. Seems to me if you've fallen on your face and failed and misled the American people that your policies would bring growth, you don't ask to do the same thing again.
So you are opposing the payroll tax holiday extension?
Well, I think there's a possibility that something like that might be continued. It was put in as a temporary tax at the president's insistence a year ago. But looking at the whole package, there's a whole bunch of more spending and so on. We need to take a look at what does make sense. The president's track record on this is not good.
All right. Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform, thank you for giving us your response to the president's address there, his plans to reduce the deficit.